All right, everybody, welcome back to the Give It a Try podcast. We have a very awesome guest today, but first, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in. If you're watching this, you are on the YouTube channel. If you are looking for the audio version, anything on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you'll probably be able to find it. But let's dive in today. We have, everybody settling because we got a fantastic guest joining us on the podcast today. I'm thrilled to introduce you to an athlete who has been on an incredible journey for the past 10 months. She's someone who has embraced the challenge, put in the work, seen some remarkable results along the way. In just under a year of being coached, she's not only completed half marathon with ease, a significant accomplishment in itself, but she's also recently tackled and conquered her first ever 50K distance. That's right, a 50-kilometer ultra marathon. Her dedication, perseverance, and willingness to push her limits are truly inspiring. She's a testament to what can be achieved with consistent effort and guidance. So please join me in giving a huge welcome to the one and only Leah Fisher. Leah, it's an absolute pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us. And we recapped your race last week. And then as we were talking, I said, you know what? We have to jump on together and talk about it because your passion and detail about the event was is something else. So welcome on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So a little background. I met you through the coaching and that my whole side of coaching. I believe I looked back, it was sometime July of last year. And when you kind of reached out, like what was your initial intentions with running and racing at that time?
So it was actually really funny. I had followed for some time a variety of runners on social media. I always joke around that my social media is pretty much like cute animals, running folks, and recipes. That's about it. um, and I had followed some ultra marathoners, so ultra runners, and really just looked up to them. And I said to myself, you know what, I turned 44 and I thought I'm gonna do an ultra marathon. So I'm gonna try and do this. And it felt really completely absurd. But I printed out like some sort of training schedule I found online. I had it on my desk. And a colleague of mine who is an athlete was in my office and was like, what are you doing? And I like snatched the paper away. Anyway, long story bearables, he said to me, um, unsolicited advice, I think you need a coach. Not that you haven't tackled things you've done before, but this is such a huge challenge. And I knew he was right. And it was something I had thought about before, but I had this imposter syndrome of saying, like, well, I'm not a real runner. So, like, only real runners have coaches. Um, which maybe we'll talk about this later, but that was like probably the first myth to dispel, right? Is this whole idea of like, what is a runner? And so I remember reaching out to you saying, like, hey, like I don't know if I'm like a real runner, but I'm trying to do this thing and I don't know if I can do it. There were a lot of disclaimers in there, but this is what I want to do. Do you think you can help me? And we sort of broke it down and like I had a half marathon schedule and you said, we'll work on that first and then we'll transition to 50K training. So that was kind of the beginning of the thing for us.
You kind of hit it right with the imposter syndrome. I get that a lot with just athletes coming on board. They're not sure. They think whether they're again, social media is a whole nother thing in and of itself because you compare yourself to a small percentage of people that are out there putting in a lot of consistent work, and then you maybe start to feel like, oh, I'm not as good as them, so why would I need a coach? But it's actually very important for someone who is kind of in the middle of the road, that intermediate level, to want to get on some sort of sustainable and longevity path of being able to train, being able to run, and doing it hopefully injury free through the whole process. So I'm glad you reached out. Yeah, first thing that we tackled was, um, well, we glitched a little bit there, but we're back. The first
Yeah.
thing that we tackled together was the half marathon, and you did that exceptionally well. I knew right away. I knew you eventually had a plan for this 50K, but right away going through just a 13.1 plan, seeing the dedication, discipline, just getting the workouts done, and trusting the process right away. It takes a little while for coach and athlete to kind of like mesh and follow the plan that the coach wants to set, because you may have this mentality of training and running beforehand that kind of may need to get broken by some people, but you were like right on board right away. And as you were just hitting the workouts and then eventually getting to 13.1 race day and being able to see those results, I remember actually you called me after the race and we're super excited with how it went. And it's like I kind of knew like that's the way it should go, but the fact that you were able to experience it and have that day was pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was. And I think that was one thing I'll say, I guess, preliminary advice, which is if you're going to go through this journey and hire a coach, which I strongly recommend, obviously, I highly recommend you as a coach, um, trust the process. Like you just said, I think that's the biggest part of it is sort of giving up this idea of like, this is what I've always done, or this is what I think I should do, or this is what other people are doing, and say, like, this person has my best interest at heart and my goals in mind and a true understanding of what this looks like. And so I'm just going to lean into that. And I really did like, okay, this is what I'm told. There was something kind of freeing, like, and that's what I would say to people. And I'm an extremely like OCD person in a lot of ways. So I just want to tell everyone who is listening that if you think, oh, it's just my personality, it's not. But there was something kind of freeing about saying, like, I'm gonna look at my schedule, look at my app. This is what I'm doing today. And didn't have to give it any thought other than like executing on the thing that was set for me.
Yeah, and it's good that you kind of found a little bit of an OCD coach, so we kind of maybe clicked on that aspect of
Works,
things.
works out well. Yeah.
So what, on my notes, looking back here in your file, the 13.1 was at the end of last year in November. So it was like a transitional period after that. Especially a lot of people are going into kind of an off season at the time after
Right.
hitting a race at that time, and it was like no for ultra marathon, especially people that want to run that distance earlier in the year, like an April or May race. It kind of got a transition right away to it. It was a difference in training a little bit. I was going to guide you more towards again volume in training. You kind of did a decent, good amount of volume for the half marathon with a little bit of intensity built into it. So that's why you're able to have such a great result and better your time there. But then it changes to again ultra marathon prep. We need to run longer distance. So it may have been a mundane plan as far as that because it's your first time at those distances. I mean, what was the longest run? Um, November when you started this. Prior to that you've ever done.
Ever, I had done a marathon years ago, but in training in recent times, literally in like years, I was running 12, maybe 15 miles max, right? And certainly not, if I was doing that, it was like that was the one for the week, and everything else was like 3 miles, like going out doing like a half an hour. I had never, and I remember distinctly like being so happy with the half, and I remember you waited and then like a week or so later being like, okay, like I'm starting to build out. You were like very very gentle with saying like, I'm starting to build it out, like you're gonna see the schedule. And I just remember this like gripping fear of like, and you were like, don't be scared, like you just take each day as it comes. And I remember you saying to me like, if you can avoid looking too far ahead, like I'm going to build out the plan for you for a couple of weeks, and if it makes you feel better you can look, but don't like just take each week as it comes. And again, it was just trusting the process of saying like, this is what it's going to look like, and we're going to slowly build you over time. And so I didn't give a lot of thought to what it looked like in a very like broad way. It was just like, this is what I have to do this week, this is what I have to do today.
That's just one of the big takeaways, and I live by that motto. Like this 2021, I trained for my first Ironman. I tell anybody that's going for this long course, whether it's Ironman or ultra marathon, or even your first marathon, whatever it is, and it's a bigger plan than you're used to. It's just yeah, glance at the future. Like if even if there's weeks and stuff and months, possibly a template in there, like it's good to kind of see like, all right, what am I needing to do at that point, but just rewind it and learn from your past weeks, learn how far you've come, but just live in that week, in that day, in that run. Okay, 8 miles, 10 miles, whatever it is that day, like just get through each chapter of the book as it goes along. You don't want to read the ending right away because things may
Right.
change. But yeah, just compartmentalizing like that because it can become very overwhelming. Anytime someone I'm like, all right, you're 16 weeks out from your marathon or whatever it is, and we're gonna start, and then like the anxiety builds, and then it takes the fun out of
Yeah.
the whole process in it, which is
Yeah,
which,
exactly.
yeah, So then we started that. It was like, all right, sorry, kind of like it's gonna be a fun off season because you're gonna be running, but it's just going to be building mileage on mileage very systematically, hoping your body accepts that. Like having done a marathon in the past is great because your body was on its feet for that long. But over the past couple years, or prior to this training plan, yeah, it's going to be a new stimulus for the body. So we were just kind of like tiptoeing along. I didn't want to hammer too much on the plan or go to, what's the goal? Like, we kind of talked about it was like, what's the goal of this 50K? It's to do a 50K. It doesn't no
Right.
when the next morning when you go back to work, it's going to be like, oh, how'd your run go? You did good. They don't care. They not care about your pace. They don't care about your time. They don't, non-runners mostly, especially, they're just, when you go out for a 5 mile run, sometimes they're impressed. So let alone going out for a 50K. So the turn of the year, like, the plan started off pretty good. And then, kind of what did you learn through the process of, I guess talking almost like a 4 or 5 months solid of just running. And, I can pull it up, but like you definitely got an A on the amount of execution through the plan because I mean there was no setbacks as far as really getting sick and taking time off where we had to readjust things back. Knock on wood, there was no injuries where we had to take things back. It was just very like one step after another, so to speak, just climbing through the plan.
Yeah, I think for me, it was kind of wild, because there were so many things, like little things that I learned along the way. Like I remember when I first started and you were like, oh, there's trail running groups and whatnot. And I've run alone for a really long time. Like again, I never really considered myself a runner. And so I never thought to join a running group. I was like, I'll be too slow. I can't do this. And so I spent a lot of time running by myself. And I remember when you said to me, it's just nice. It's when you're on your feet for that long, it's nice to do that. When you're getting into something like trail running, which I had done a little bit of, but really not significantly, you were like, it's nice to be around people and hear their experiences and also just like have company. And, as part of this process, I found a little running group in my neighborhood that I now run with all the time. Um, so that's huge. That's something that I never thought I'd ever want. And now it's like, I can't imagine not having it. I got to know the trail running community a little, which is a really special kind of unique community, which is not something that I ever thought. I remember the first time I hit like 200, I think it was 200 miles in a month. And I remember like messaging you and being like, I ran 200 miles this month. Like these little milestones, like where along the way, I wasn't as conscious of it. Um, I will say, like, I had many more good days than tough days. And I think a big part of that was it felt like such an accomplishment every time you made a workout for me because it wasn't my plan and I was able to execute on it, whatever it was. And some of the plan was like, hey, we're going to do this speed drill, something I'd never done that before. I'd never done speed drills. Or you're going to have two, like you would warn me sometimes, like, hey, you're going to have two back-to-back days. So you're going to have a 12 mile and a 10 mile right on top of each other. I'm just letting you know, not to scare you, but so you're prepared, nutrition wise, all of that. And so when I did it, like for me, I was so much more focused on like living in the present, like living in the moment and being in that experience. And like, so when I got through it, it felt like so rewarding to say, like, oh, I did it. I checked the box. Like, how coach is going to be proud of me for finishing. So that was like really a thing. Like, I think being coached is very unique in that there's an accountability outside of you. And it's not to say you need it, but it's to say that when you have it, it's really lovely to have someone who's like, at your back, wants you to succeed, has created a plan for you. And so it's not just like I did this, but at the end of the day, there's someone else saying, like, I believe in you and you can do this. And this is the plan I made for you to do it. And so that was more like, I think I really went into it with like, not to sound silly, but like an abundance mindset, right? Like to say, like, I'm so lucky because there are people who are injured or who have handicaps or have disabilities or have illness or so many things where they can't do this. I went into it with such a feeling of gratitude to say, I'm so grateful that I have a body that's able to do this. I have the resources to like be able to do this. I have someone who's helping me, who's so kind and also so knowledgeable, guiding me through this process. And so, did I have difficult moments? Yeah. And I feel like the funny thing is, you intuitively kind of knew, right? Like that was the time when you outreached me and you were like, hey, maybe we should get together. Maybe we should get together and talk. And we did, right? Because those were the moments where I was like, I'm tired. Like I'm working full time. I'm working 40 to 60 hours a week. I still want to see friends and do things and see my family and have a life. And I'm also running a lot and I'm kind of hitting a wall a little bit. And those are the moments where you were there, I think, really kind of cheering me on. And like that's when you just intuitively knew, probably because of your experience with other athletes, like, hey, this is a good time for us to touch base and for me to say, like, where are you in this journey? So any down was followed by an up. Everything was something I was able to sort of weather, and didn't feel sort of catastrophic to the process. There was no point in which I said, oh, I'm just going to give up. I never, and not criticizing anyone who has that, but I didn't have that in the training. I was more just like, let's do this.
Well, it's like the rule of thirds. It's like you feel good, you feel crappy, and you feel in the middle. And as long as you're feeling all those emotions through your training plan, it probably means you're on path for some type of stretch goal. You know, it's nothing. You're not training for a 10K where you're just running a couple miles a day. You're like, this is easy and go on my life. Like there's a little bit of a stretch involved there. You're going to do something new, a new journey forward, progressing forward. So, but having that again, that little bit of gratitude along the way, kind of humbles you. I've been leaning into that a lot as well lately. When training gets tough or a tough session, or even in the middle of a race when you're like just kind of grinding, trying to push yourself, and it's like leaning into the pain a little bit, like knowing that like yeah, I'm able to feel this way because of all the things that are in place. I'm kind of grateful I can push and feel the pain right now, because there's plenty of people again that are sidelined or can't be out there right now that would want to be out there feeling it like that. So it's good to there's one thing I do want to mention, which I did make a note on, is we did do you did show up at the Backyard Ultra. We had a Backyard Ultra in December, or locally. So this was after your half marathon. So you had some fitness. It was a few weeks later. Bunch of friends again. That trail running community was there. We kind of brought you in that day. We're like, hey, experience all this, and not for nothing, but I just want to let everybody know, like you were able to you set a goal, and you were very smart with it. You stopped when you hit your goal for the day, even though I think you were feeling good. But I believe you did 20 miles that day, on the loops, four plus mile loops, and like when I saw you able to do that, I was like, really the first time I think we like met, and I was able to see you running. I was like, in the back of my head, I knew like as long as we get through this training plan, without any big hiccups, like she's going to be able to do this easily. We have 5 months to get this prep, but to watch you do that 20 miles in a format that is like kind of like the race you sign up for, which we'll get
Yeah.
into, is I was like, all right, we're in a good spot to start here. Like we don't have to play catch up. Like if we're able to do like a 20 miles here in December, like we're going to have some fun over the next few months. So thanks for coming out that day. That was pretty cool to who knows if you're going to revisit the Backyard Ultra at some point. We'll talk to that at
I,
the end, just
I,
saying.
I will.
But then like training led into this. So why did you choose the ultra you chose was the Forgotten Forest Ultra in Connecticut. It's a small race, which was pretty cool. I was actually
Yep.
looking into it. Unfortunately, had a wedding the night before, because I was like, maybe I can get up there and actually get that event done when you originally signed up for it. Because it's cool. Like I like it to have a small, intimate event like that. But give us a little bit just background on the event, why you chose that one, and a little bit about the race.
Um, I I did want to be closer to home. Like I've traveled for races before, and actually it's kind of we'll talk about later my future planning. But I wanted to be a little bit closer to home. My thought being that it would just, for such a big event, it would help me sort of be acclimated and settled the night before instead of being in a strange place I didn't know. I will shamelessly admit that I was looking for a flatter ultra. Some of them are really crazy with elevation. And so I was really trying to find, I was not familiar with the course at all, but a lot of folks said, like, yes, there's elevation, but it's definitely one of the flatter courses. It appealed to me that it was a smaller race. I have something very unusual for a runner, which is claustrophobia. So, like some races where people are like, "Oh, you have to do this race," I can't actually. I'm hard to tell on video. I'm very short, 5 feet, and so the idea of being in like big crowds is really overwhelming for me. Even though there's a lot of energy there, it's hard for me to kind of manage that anxiety on top of all the other anxiety I have. Um, and so that was kind of my thought. Like it was close by. It was fairly flat. It got really good reviews. I always say. That's a huge thing for me. Like people kind of, I think, undervalue that, but like look at the reviews. Like people will talk about the race directors, they'll talk about the course, they'll talk about logistics. Maybe this is a function of aging. Like I'm in my 40s now. When I was in my 20s, I didn't care, but in my 40s, like logistics matter to me. Like how challenging is it to get to the race? How early do you have to get there? What does that look like? Right. My 20s, I would have like taken 3 buses to get to a race. In my 40s, like I like parking and be able to walk to the start line. So there were parts of it that really appealed to me. And um most everyone that reviewed it, like the overwhelming majority, were basically like, I had a great experience, and they went back again and again. And so to me, that was like such a huge selling point.
Nice. So, just for context, that day there was, I believe, 44 finishers. So you can just kind of get the idea of the race. But the format is No, unlike the couple 50Ks that I've only seen where they're either point to point or one big loop, this is how far was each loop? So you were able to actually pass by quote unquote like an aid stop or a cruise spot up on there quite often on this.
Yeah, so that was another thing. That's a good point. So it was about a little over 2.1 miles between 2.1 and 2.2, the loop. And you run through what they call the race pavilion. So that's a huge, for me, from a like nutrition and hydration standpoint, you didn't necessarily have to carry stuff with you. If you felt comfortable, you could just pick it up on your way through, which logistically felt really manageable too. So
I,
that's the
I know
way.
some people listening are saying 2 point something miles looped
Yeah,
for
right. So they're
31
like, so you
miles.
did that
Like, no
freaking
way. But
15 times? Like that's
but
so
yeah,
bananas.
but
Yeah.
I do recommend a formula, especially again, you're experiencing this for the first time. So being able to see more, people like some of the races that I've done, even with bigger fields, a couple hundred people, like if it's point to point, like as much as I don't mind running alone sometimes, like you can get not see people for miles. You can just be in this
Yeah.
weird pace spot by yourself and you don't see an aid stop for 8 or 9 miles. You don't see anybody for 5 or 6 miles. And it's like, sometimes so being the first time doing it, I think it'd be nicer for people to just like you want to experience it, you want to have fun, you want to have the support you need. Like that's what it's all about, just having a good experience there. So being able to loop like that, but it was a loop where, not like the backyard ultra where it was a timed loop where you would have to, start every hour on the hour. This was you're passing the loop and you just keep going whenever you're ready, basically.
Right. And so there were loops where I didn't, and we'll talk about that a little bit, but like there were loops where I didn't stop at all. And there were loops that I did. And I think for me, just like what you just said, there were actually times that I didn't see people like on the loops. And so coming through and seeing like the couple of folks that were there to support me and seeing the race directors who were like amazing, truly like shout out to them because they were amazing and like super positive. It was definitely something that helped keep me going for sure.
Awesome. And that's good to have. Again, a runner in their 40s just like you, like that's something that I appreciate more now through my journey is like a good at race experience. If I'm going to pay for a race, I want to have a good experience. Like you're going through this process to enjoy the day. So having positive people there, having the race director there, even like the backyard ultra, they were there at the start line every time, kind of amping us up, and just being able to feel welcomed, like they have passion for it as well. It's not just
Yeah.
thrown on an event so they can put a couple bucks in their pocket, which is kind of nice.
Right.
So
Yeah.
kind of like leading into the day, like again, no hiccups. We spoke a little bit before that, but kind of like race week, everything's there. You did it all, and it's like I just had this conversation with somebody now. Like we've just finished up a quick pacing plan talk for their half marathon this weekend, and I'm like, all right, here's the ball, get in the game. Like it's ready to go. It's your turn. Like I unfortunately, unless I'm running the race next to you, like I'm not going to be out there with you. You're going to have a lot of decisions to make, a lot of things. Hopefully, your training will pay off all those decisions that you had to make through training that I always tell people about. Like, you're going to have to make a lot of decisions on race day, and those decisions get magnified at the ultra distance. Like you said, coming around these loops, do I want to stop this time? Do I not want to stop? What do I want to take? What should I take on the next one? Do I have to change my clothes? Am I hot? Am I cold? Like, there's just going to be so many things, again, for hours magnified out there. But you were kind of leaning into it. I know normal, right? How was the race anxiety level a little bit before? Because I still get it on all my races. It's like I love training, but when it's time to like make the donuts there, like it's time to make it happen. It's like it's just because not like it matters. We've spoken about this, but like your results last forever out there. Anybody can look up and be like, "Oh, how did she do on?" Like anyway, after this, people can look up your result and be like, "I want to dig in and see how she really did," which we'll talk
Right.
about because I'm impressed by it. Uh, but like, so how was the level driving up there? Like, how were the feels? The day or two before.
Oh my gosh, I was a mess. And it was funny, like physically I felt very prepared. But there's that anxiety of, and you helped me, and I'll shout out to my mom because she helped me as well. Sue's the queen. Um, by both saying to me, like, what's the worst that can happen? Like, and not, and my worst case scenario wasn't like, oh, I'm going to fall, I'm going to get injured. Like, my worst case is like, I'm not going to finish. And both of you were like, sucks, would suck. But like, if you don't finish, you didn't finish. That sucks. But like, you've been on this journey, you're prepared for it. We think you're going to finish. We have faith in you. We would like you to have faith in you. But if that were to happen, like it could happen. Things like you know, it's that old axiom, like I'm not a religious person, but like we plan and God laughs, right? Like you can plan everything. And then you get to that day and something is off. You're off, the weather is off, your race gets canceled, they change the path. Like there's a million things that can happen. And just like you lean into the process or the unknown of the training, I think the same thing happens on race day. You kind of have to give it up to a higher power and say, I know I'm prepared. I've done everything I'm supposed to. Like I went to bed at a decent hour the night before. I'm not a carb person. I'm a burger person before races, which I know is sacrilege, but I love a good burger and fries before a race. Um, so like ton of hydration the night before, like a ton of stretching. And like I was like, I'm ready. In any way I can be ready, I'm ready. But was I scared? Oh my God. I was scared up until the moment I stepped foot on that start line, like terrified. But um I've always lived by the axiom of pushing through fear. The
Nice.
the things I've done in my life pushing through fear have been the absolute best things that have ever happened to me. So I was like, I just got to get through it. Just have to fight my way through it. And I did, but man, I was terrified. I was really scared.
Well, it's the quote I say all the time. You control the controllables. Like you said, we did everything we needed to do to the moment that the start line finished. But it's like, granted, yes, anything can happen up there. I've seen it happen in many races. I've seen it happen in some of my races with some of the people I train with recently. It's like, it's all great until you get punched in the face. You know,
Right.
you make one
Yeah.
wrong step, you twist an ankle on the first loop, second loop, or and it's like, great, wonderful. You know, I like to just go in a mentality of like, I'm ready for this. I'll finish this. I did all the work I had to do this. Like, but again, anything can happen, and you just have to be okay with that because when it does happen, you have to be calm, cool, and collective. You can't just throw everything out the window and say screw it. Like, all right, something happens like that, you pivot and try and make the best of it and try and have a different goal that day. But glad that start line came up. You know, no big issues. You know, you got cranked and started that day. It was a warm day, right? The weather kind of was like we were training, and then unfortunately, that was like that first week of warm weather, and it was a warm one for you.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect example of something where you have to kind of pivot, right? So like fortunately for me, I brought clothing, like a bunch of different options, but it was literally about 12 degrees warmer than it was supposed to be that day. Which if you know anyone who's a runner and athlete, like that's a huge differential. That's not a 1 or 2 degree swing. And so there's all different considerations now, right? Because it's not just like, is my clothing appropriate? It's also hydration. Like I don't want to be dehydrated and you're sweating a lot more in that weather. And so there was, and I don't know if we'll get to, but like there was definitely a point where I was riding the struggle bus and had to do like that cardinal thing you're not supposed to do during a race, which is something you've never tried during training. So um I'm gonna say like definitely don't do that. Like don't do what I did. Better to consider these things during training, which you definitely encouraged me to do. Is just the one thing. I think we talked a bunch about nutrition and hydration, and I got a couple of slaps on the hand for not focusing as much on it. But that was definitely something when I got out there. I was happy. It was a beautiful day, but it was definitely much warmer than I'd been training in. I hadn't done any runs of any great length in really nice or warm weather. Um, and yeah, it was hot out there.
I mean, in context, well, we're on Long Island, and we had a decently cold winter leading into this. I
Yeah.
remember you, you know, dressed like a ninja. Your early morning runs, like I was out there a couple mornings this winter too, and it was, you know, I don't think I've bundled up more often for morning runs in the last few years than this past year. So we were definitely not heat acclimated by any means by this. But like you said, that day comes. All right, you know, you gotta really just slow it down a little bit. You definitely have to pull back a little bit. This is gonna maybe be a little longer day than I wanted it to be. And I remember we talked about some highs and lows through it. That first 10 miles, so really that like first five loops out there, kind of how did that go the first, third of the race?
So this is so weird because I had in my head, because when you watch so many different runners, they talk a lot about like places where you're going to hit a wall. And like so many people will talk about like later in the race, like this is where you hit the wall, right? Where your body is like you've been on your feet a long time, whatever. For me, it was the first third of the race, which is so weird, right? And I think a lot of it had to do with the heat. And so I was not proud to say I was dehydrated immediately. Like 8 miles in, I was dehydrated in all the ways you don't want to be dehydrated. And they're, like I said, great race directors I was too terrified to even like share it with the couple. I had family, just two family members there. And I was like really afraid to even share it with them because I was like, they're going to tell me to stop, or I don't know. I had all these irrational thoughts. Um, and I was going to a dark place of like, I'm not going to be able to finish this because I'm like really riding the struggle bus. And then one of the race directors, I was kind of like leaning over the watermelon, like trying to figure out. And one of the race directors said to me, "Have you had any hydration tablets yet?" And I was like, please don't make fun of me. What is that? So, runners research hydration tablets. I didn't know anything about it, sodium tablets or hydration tablets. Admittedly, I just was not something I was familiar with. That was a lack of education on my part. And I did the thing you're not supposed to do, which try something you've never tried before. But they were like, of all the things, and I shared that fear, and they were like, I understand that, but this isn't something like we don't know of anyone that has difficulty like digesting these. It's not going to cause your stomach upset. It's like taking 30 Gatorades and cramming it into like a pill. So, really, in this heat, every 45 minutes to an hour, you should be taking one of these. And I was like, I don't have them. And they're like, we do. That's what we're here for. So, um, I did that. I had a little bit, I took some hydration with caffeine, which is something I've done before, but I don't really take in a lot of caffeine. I took in a little caffeine. I got my cousin showed up, my younger cousin, who I'm extremely close with, like Ubered from the city and just showed up and I saw his face. So I was really riding the struggle bus in the first third and I hit the second third strong. Like I got a second wind. I really turned, and some of it was really mental for me where I was like, girl, don't give up. Like, what are you doing? Like, because I think it makes it worse, right? Like, I'm sure you've had this a million times, Ken. Like, you feel yourself as soon as you have that thought, you just lean into it. Like, I don't feel good. And then you start focusing on the thing, the negative thing. And so it's not a physical thing. Like, I dealt with the physical stuff, right? Like, here I am hydrating myself and I'm doing what I need to do. Um, it was the mental thing of like, don't lean into that. Like, just like go down trying at least, right? Like, you're not going to give up now. Like, but I got a second wind. And I was like, okay. And my cousin was like, had asked the race directors, and we were at a point in the race in which they allowed pacers, like, LOL, who wants to pace in this? But my cousin was like, who's not even a runner, was like, I'll do a loop with you. And it was perfection. Like it was just he hopped on that one loop with me. I was well hydrated. I had a little bit of caffeine sort of lighting me up. And so the second and last third of the race were really, I felt really good. Like it sounds rude to say, but like I remember even that point in which I hit the marathon mark, where I had run a marathon, and I was like, I thought when I hit that it was going to be so mentally daunting. Like, oh my God, I have 5 miles left on top of a marathon. And I was like, okay, two more loops. So like as much as the loops, I know people feel like it sounds horrendous. For me, it was like, oh, I only have two more loops left to do. The last loop was I was tired. I remember, I think I shared this with you, coach, that like one of the women was like, "Oh, you're like the fourth woman right now. If you do an extra loop, you'll move your position up." And I was like, just like we talked about with the backyard ultra, I feel like one of the most important things as a runner, no matter how much you want it, is to know your limits. I think more people get injured not knowing their limits. That's my personal opinion. And it was so tempting, but I knew I was tired. I was tired. I was hot. I was hydrated, but barely. And I just knew, like, nope, this was my goal. I wanted to finish the 50K and I wanted to finish it healthy. In order to do that, I needed to stop. because I felt like if I did that last loop, just like with the backyard, I would have gotten injured or something would have happened. I just knew I knew my limits that day, and I was like really happy, and of course cried crossing the finish line.
Well, the good thing about those the backyard on this is again there are races where people can go longer. You kind of set your own goals, so it's a different type of event. Because if you would have just signed up for a 50K, it's kind of it becomes, and again it's you versus you, but it's a race, fastest time from start to finish on a given
Hmm.
course. With this, it's I would say it's less stress, but even at the backyard, like you went there with a goal. I went there with a goal. Even myself when
Hmm.
I got to that goal was like, should I do more? And it's like this was the goal. Like I went into that. If you went into again the next time the backyard, all right, I've done an ultra now. I'd want to just run my furthest I've ever run before. And
Hmm.
maybe that's that extra loop. Maybe that's 33 miles or 35 miles. Like you
Right.
said though, that there's that point where it's like, well, do I want to shoot for 50? I feel pretty good. It's like again, there's a time and place to push, but it doesn't always have to be all the time. Because you finish the race and then when we spoke, it's like cool, how do you feel? Okay, naturally sore, naturally physically and mentally riding off of this super high that you've had for a 5 month journey, but being able to get back into what you love doing, and that's running, is the main goal at the end of the day. Like to leave everything out there in one performance that will now take you a setback for weeks and possibly months because we pushed just a little too far. What does that really get anybody as just again me, you, everybody? Unless we're shooting for the podium every time we go out there, and that's something we do. We're middle of the road age group runners, so that's what we do. It's a hobby. We're not getting paid to go do these performances. So it's just inevitably about a good experience, getting back out there and training, get back out your friends that you like to see, because nobody wants to be sidelined while they're all out there, missing you and things like that. So, and you finished strong though. Like you said, the biggest struggle sounded like it was up front, which kind of can happen on those longer runs. Those, I felt it even on my long training runs for these events. Is just like some days you're like, oh, what, I got 20 miles to run today, and by mile 6, I'm ready to hang my shoes up. But again, that
Right.
pet getting through that point, digging yourself out a little bit of hole, not giving up right away, and then just being having that resilience to keep moving forward with it. It got hot throughout the day from what I heard from you, and then what did that just I guess that last few miles, like you said, from that marathon distance or 20-mile plus distance to crossing that finish line, like how was that last loop knowing like this is probably gonna be my last loop, like it's all coming together, like I'm here, this is happening.
It was so wild, like honestly, because I was so conscious of the loops. And then at some point I kind of lost myself in it. Like I wasn't as focused on like, oh, this is my third, this is my fourth. And the way the format of the race is like you're not like chipped or anything. They basically just as you go through it, they have to see your number and they'll call out to you saying like this is the loop you're on. And so it's kind of lost myself in it. And then I was very conscious of those last two loops. And I think I said, so the course is one where it's like kind of flatter trail, a little bit of roots, rocks, bunch of incline spots, a whole ton of roots and rocks that you're running over. Um, and then like a flatter trail at the end. And I remember every time I got to that flatter trail, I was like, oh yes, like this is so mad. Like I don't have to like, because I think really what you can't mentally prepare for unless you've trained on trail is that there's this entire mental component of like, I don't want to face plant. And so I can't just, I know there are people that are super skilled and can just like plow through, but like you have to be conscious of where you're stepping, right? Like you always say in like training to your athletes, like, head up unless you're on the trail and eyes down, right? And so that was definitely like it was the mental and physical and the tug between that. And I remember in those last two loops, like the second, the penultimate loop, like getting to that trail part and saying to myself, you have one more of these. And it was the most out of body, truly experience of going like, oh my God, I can't believe I've done 14 loops. It was like I lost myself and I was very present, but I really had lost myself in the experience. And I got to that last stretch. My cousin ran the last loop with me, the last two loops, and I get to the last stretch. And I remember saying to him, like, we're almost the flat part, right? It's like it almost felt surreal. Like I needed someone to tell me, like, yes, like this is actually happening. And what I loved is because I really paced myself, and that was important to me. Like, could I have gone faster? Yeah, maybe, but I was really intent on pacing myself because my goal was to finish. And so I had some juice left, so I was able to run strong across the finish line. It wasn't even like I jogged or shuffled. Like I ran strong. And it was to the point where like I felt it, but then you're like, maybe I'm just in my head. And I remember my mom saying to me, like, man, you blasted right across that finish line. And so that was a really proud, exciting moment for me that I was able to do that. And to have the race directors, they knew it was my first 50K. That's why I said they're like spectacular. They were like, amazing, like we're proud of you, that was fantastic. And like one of them was like, do you want me to write 50K in the back of the medal? And I was like, hell yes, I want you to write 50K. So I got 50K with an exclamation point.
Nice.
It was surreal. It really was. Like I think there are a few, like I've done things in my life that I pushed through and I've been proud of, but this was just surreal. Like that last loop was just truly something of magic. I could tell you, like, I may have lost 7 loops in the middle, but like that last loop, I remember like each part going like, okay, this is the last time I'm gonna do this. This is the last time I'm gonna do this.
That's probably a good feeling on a course like that, where it's like, all right, when you know, like, I'm not doing any more after this. This is my last loop. Like, you've really intimately been with that trail all day. You know, the same
Yes.
trees, the same elevation, the same hills.
The
Like,
same muddy, the
yeah, it's
same
the same
muddy
puddle
part
you
you
have
have
to
to
go
go
around. Yep.
around.
Well, Coach Ryan, who's been on here before, would be proud of you in two aspects there. One, for crossing the finish line strong, because that's one of his big things in ultras is like,
Okay.
no matter how deep he is in the hurt locker, he's like, just wants to, show that he's got that extra gear at the end. So it's awesome you went across. But that's one thing also that I want to let people know about, especially 50Ks or longer races, is there's a big difference between 50K road and even 50K non-technical trail. Obviously it's a little more technical, but is that Ryan calls it trail vision, is like you're out there for hours, but you're not out there head up like you would be on a road marathon, just looking at the horizon, perfect form, just getting it done. It's a mental component where you're looking at every footstep, you're looking ahead, you're looking at where that tree branch is, where that divot is, where the road's pitched a little bit, and that mentally taxes you a lot on top of the physical aspect of things. So after a few hours out there of that, like your brain has been working. You're not just able to just zone out and look. So it's like one of those mental components that people have to practice and train, and will fatigue you more on race day, just because you have to add that on top of it. So through this whole thing, though, like, you know, 50K, check. Awesome. Like, what did you learn about yourself through this whole process? Like, you wanted to accomplish something. You damn well put the work in to get there, and earned that, because nothing's ever given. That wasn't a shoo-in that you were going to complete it. It never is for any race, for anybody. But you earned that finish that day. You earned to say you completed a 50K that day. Like, what did you learn about the whole thing, the whole process getting there?
Um, I learned I like running with other people. Don't undervalue like how nice it is to have company while running. I still love running by myself and I do a ton of it, but I like having the company too. I learned the absolute joy of being coached, because it truly is like something, that process is something really unique and special and something that it's hard to even describe, to have, like I said, this accountability sort of partner, right? I I say it like often, but I learned like I can do hard things. And I think it sounds strange. Like when you've accomplished something, people are, even if you say like, oh, I'm going to run a 50K, what do people always say? Well, you run a marathon, you'll be fine. Or you run. And I think it's important to convey to people like, but each time it's something new. Even if you've run a marathon and you're running in a marathon, another marathon, it's like, yeah, but I've aged a year, or this has happened, or nothing has changed. But it's still like, it's a hard thing. And it's like, how do you commit yourself to that? Like, what sacrifices do you have to make? Like, there were times when, someone say, like, oh, we're, going out for drinks or we're doing this. And I'm like, I got to do 20 miles tomorrow morning. Like, I could go out, but like, I'm not going to be happy, or just knowing like there were different points in which I was recommitting to the thing, right? They say that about relationships, like with people, like every day you wake up and make the decision. And I think what I learned is like with this type of training, every day you wake up and make the decision, right? Like every time I set out on a run, I was recommitting to the idea of this goal. Like, if I want to do this, this is what I have to do. And so that recommitment was something I learned about myself. Like I'm capable, like I said, I'm kind of OCD. I'm a regimented person. So I'll follow schedules, so to speak. But there's something different about taking on something that takes up so much time and energy and really involves some sacrifice. So I learned that. I learned that a proper taper after a long training is torture. Like mentally, like the most daunting experience, but totally necessary. Do the taper, people. Like I don't know if I could have done the race if I hadn't tapered. Um and I learned like I reaffirmed for myself, like just like you said earlier, coach, like this is something like I want to be running races when I'm in, God bless, like in God willing, in my like 70s and 80s. Like I want to be out there where we see these people and we're like, so and so finished this thing. And so it's a long haul. And in order to do that, like we have to take care of our bodies. We have to um, be mindful. And so I have learned through training, like you have taught me, like when do we push and when do we hold back, right? Like when do we say like there's a reason why I'm doing an easy run. Like I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to do anything. There's a reason. There's a method behind the madness. There's a way to keep our bodies healthy and our minds plugged into all of this. And that happens when we trust the process. So that was it was a lot of learning. It was a lot of learning. I learned that I could finally call myself a runner. It only took 44 years and a 50K. I got there.
And you mentioned it too. There's sacrifices along the way. I did a whole episode about it of things. When I look back at my last 8 or 9 year journey, whatever it was, compartmentalizing the sacrifices that you do have to make when you had those back-to-back runs on a weekend. You knew you had a long run Saturday and a long run Sunday to make up the mileage for the weekend. Yeah, your plans for Saturday afternoon, Saturday night may not be the ones you would have had a few weeks ago or a few months ago. There's this is the importance of as well cycling the season. I have all too many people. They'll throw race after race after race, and they're always chasing a race, but they don't ever take a step back. And you'll never. We're not going to keep you in 50K shape all year. That's one thing too, where we'll mention real quick is the step back that you do take after these big events is
Yeah.
don't say, oh, I'm losing fitness or anything. It's just you were prepped for a certain event and now you're going to change paths, whether that's just to casually run and feel healthy for the next 6 months, whatever it is. We'll get the baseline
Mhm.
for that. But then you can start to maybe cycle back to revisiting some of these sacrifices that you had to have for this training period, going to see friends a little more, just kind of living a little, getting out, and maybe picking up another hobby you had for a little while. You have your own podcast, and that's actually how, I started up with some of this, was touching base with you on some of those things. Is like maybe you have a little more time now and you start to do some more of that because you really like doing that. So that's why it's important to cycle. And then even right now, for looking at your calendar, there's really nothing big and audacious in the near future, but that's a good thing. Like you just literally, especially a 10-month journey from getting to here, but a big 5 to 6 month block to get this race done. So you kind of like deserve to just have some cool, easy runs with friends and chill for a little while, do things you want to do, get back out. You're very active between, getting on your bike and strength training and doing these other modalities, which is amazing, which is, I think, a big part of why your training went so well. Your calendar wasn't just full of running every other day or running 4 or 5 days a week. You're just an active person, that's a big component of success in these long distance ultra type events, is being able to fit that cross training in the schedule. So the fact that you're able to still do that throughout the training as well was part of your success with that as well.
Thanks. Yeah. And I cannot stress enough to people like stretch. I meet so many runners that don't stretch, they don't do yoga. I don't know how their bodies don't crack into a million pieces, but I always say like the reason I feel good today and I'm walking and I'm doing all the things I ran this morning is because I stretch.
And you're strong. You do the strength training. So again, we're 40 plus runners in that age group, and whether you're male or female, it's strength training plus stretching. Like, and it doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be these big programs, but doing it versus not doing it is a huge difference, and that's definitely a part of the longevity piece going forward with it. Like you said, this is not just we're in our 20s anymore, and whatever you do, you just do well at it. So you do have to fight for it. I do want to mention though that because you're a coach athlete, and I think you didn't even really know until we spoke after the race about it, but for that day there was 44 people that finished this event, and the way they do results and stuff like this, especially like the backyard ultra format, is whoever went the furthest. I saw the furthest somebody ran that day was 48.3 miles because they had, I think it was a 9 hour time limit for the event, so it's kind of how far you can go. So they ran 48.3 miles in that, and then it kind of just rates everybody. So there was a big, because of that 50K mile, that little milestone, that a lot of people went to the 31.5 miles and called the day there. So you actually had, out of that 44 people, you had 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 people right there in the middle that did the 50K and said, I'm good, that was my goal for the day. A couple people went for that little victory lap afterwards. But out of that group of 10 people, because you all did 31.5 miles, they're gonna kind of rate you based off of how long it took you to do the 31.5 miles. So I just want to throw this out there that out of those people, you were the top person in that group of 10 that actually that did it in the faster time there. So 17th overall distance wise out of 44. That's pretty awesome. And I believe you were the 1 2 3, you were in the top 5 women that were out there that day. So that's pretty cool. And Ultra Sign Up ranks you by many factors and gives you a percentage on there based on the race and the distance and your age and all that other fun stuff. 3, 4, 5, 6, and you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th out of everybody in ranked on Ultra Sign Up that day, and your percentage that goes on your little profile there forever. But just want to say, like, that's again, you had your goal, and then we see what shakes up. You don't know who shows up that day and what their abilities are, but overall, when you compare yourself to the people that were out there that day, I'm sure it wasn't all their first 50Ks out there. You kind of knocked it out of the park, which was just a good ending to the story for that 50K, because you put in the work, you kind of deserved a good result. You struggled, not struggled, you went through some hard times that day, learned what you can get through, learned about your resilience that day. And that's why I think it was super important to just discuss and have this conversation, publicly, and kind of put it out there. And it's good because I like to put these in my races. I like to hear about other people's races, because maybe a year or two from now, if you're struggling to find that what's next, and you look back and listen in and give you some memories on the day, it might motivate you to kind of just put those shoes on and set another goal and get out there. But now that it's all done, we learned so much about the day and yourself throughout the journey. Would you do it again? Is an ultra marathon out of the question in your future?
For me, when I was signing up, I was like, this is a one and done. But I think another lesson I've learned is don't never say never. I don't know. I don't know. It's not something that's on my radar right now, but would I say I would never do it again? Absolutely not. Like when you mentioned the backyard ultra, I was like, oh, I would definitely do that again, and who knows how far I could go in that. So no, I would definitely not rule it out. It's not a short-term goal of mine, but it's something that I think what I've learned is like it's important to just be open to the possibility of a thing. If you had told me 10 years ago I was going to run a 50K, I would have told you were crazy. So why close your mind to the possibility of anything, I guess.
And when I say like what's next to people, it doesn't always have to be another race, where we like to move our bodies. We like to do things. You have a lot of different cross training things that you do. So when I ask you the question, what's next or what's on your radar, it could be anything. It could be become more flexible, get into more of a mobility plan. It could be get stronger. It could be do more strength training. There's so many different avenues of how to better yourself. So what is next, or what is the path that you're gonna seek to maybe go down in the near future?
Well, I leave Monday for a hiking trip, a big hiking trip. So I'm really excited about that. So that's another way I move my body. And I sort of scheduled this whole thing so I could be recovered to beat my body up a little bit more again. And I think I made a joke, a really horrible, cheesy joke too, that it was the summer of strength, that I really wanted to work. I kept up to your, what you said earlier with like light strength training, but I really dialed it back pretty significantly during like my training season. And so, at this point, I think it would be important for me, like, if I want to increase my strength, like to sort of balance it out, like, still want to do some distance, still want to do some running, but like sort of balance it out a little bit and have like a mix of, still running a couple of days a week, but really work on my core, work on my leg strength, like all of that stuff really is, I think, super important for uh, keeping the body moving and ultimately share this with you, sort of not that long term, kind of 6 month goal of like working on my half marathon time again, maybe focusing a little bit more on time. The 50K was really a goal, a finish goal. And so now saying like, okay, I did that. So now let's do this.
Well, I want you to enjoy the hiking trip because you earned it. And you know, half marathon, yeah, we're going under 150 the next time. I'm just telling you that right now. You know,
I'm
it's
ready.
we're gonna do it. We're gonna pick a nice course. We're gonna pick something fun and get it done. But enjoy the trip. Enjoy. Obviously I'll be here to help you along the way with whatever you need. As always, when you're committed to something, I'm committed to something just the same way back. And really, if you got anything else, I just want to say thank you for coming on and telling your story. I think it was it's a lot of people, especially a lot of coach athletes I have right now, just kind of needed to hear the whole, like, the feelings they're feeling through their plans and their journeys is normal. We all feel them. Like, it's so, especially some of those people that are more of the solo runners where they don't have other people to kind of bounce how they feel off of and say, yeah, I felt like that last year when I was training for my race. To hear it, I think, from somebody else who just accomplished something, a pretty big goal, is something that they needed to hear. So I appreciate you coming on and telling your story. You got any last words for anybody or words of encouragement or anything like that?
Uh, I think the last thing I'll say just to that effect is like you can do hard things. Like I've always felt like like I said, I never called myself a runner. It's just like a regular person. And so it's easy to get caught up, especially with social media and like the intimidation factor, people going like, well, yeah, they're, look at them, of course. Look at the body they have, look at the life they have, look at the training they have. And I think I cannot stress enough that like anyone can do hard things. It's daunting, but if you have the right resources and the right tribe and the right motivation, you can do it. It's going to take dedication and perseverance and a lot of time. But thank you so much for having me. Truly, this was fantastic. I always listen to your podcast. It was fun to be on it. And thank you for everything you did for me. This was truly magical. I mean, you're stuck with me now for a while, but I really it was a huge thing for me, and I'm really really glad that we did it.
Awesome. Well, congrats again, and everybody, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed the journey along the way here, and just stay safe, stay healthy out there. Leah, I wish you the best. Have fun on your hiking trip, and I'm sure we'll touch base when you get back.
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, everybody, take care. Keep balancing life 1 mile at a time, and I will catch you on the next one.